access them within the class. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. What we are discussing in the last session? In the last session, we are trying to understand what are access modifiers or specifiers available in Java. So what is the purpose of access specifiers? They are used to specify the accessibility for our classes, constructors, variables, and methods. That means who can access our class, who can access our variable, who can access our constructor, who can access our method can be controlled by using access modifiers or specifiers. So there are 4 modifiers available. One is public, second one is private, third one is protected, fourth one is default. When to go for public? When we want to provide the global access for the classes, methods, variables and constructors, then we can go for public. Public means it is a global, anybody can access that. Right. Next one, what is private? When to go for private? What is private? When to go for private? Private means local. Within the class, we can access private methods and private variables. If I declare the variable or method or constructor as a private, we can call them or we can access them within the class. We cannot access them outside of the class. Then, what is the use of protected? Same package as well as outside also subclasses can access. If I make my class as a private, what will happen? Is it valid? Can I declare class as a private? No. Class cannot be declared as a private. Compiler also cannot access. JVM also cannot access. That's why private is not used for the classes. Variables, methods, constructors can be declared as a private. If I declare my class constructor as a private, then what will happen? If I declare the constructor as a private, then what will happen? We can create the object only within the class. We cannot create the object outside of the class. If I declare variable as a private, within the class we can access the variable. Outside the class we cannot access. If I declare method as a private, we can access that method within the same class, but we cannot access that outside. So we need to be very careful when we are working with access modifiers. Alright. So today we are going to understand encapsulation. That is one of the most important principle in the OOPS concepts. We discussed about OOPS concepts, right? ये भाई देखो कैसे सुन रहा है क्लास आराम से सो के परवेश नींद आ रहा है क्या right so we are trying to understand what are the OOPS principles. Could you please remember, do you remember what we discussed about OOPS? Yes, OOPS having 4 principles: encapsulation, abstraction, inheritance and polymorphism. Any programming language which is supporting for those principles, it is called as object-oriented programming language. Only Java is object-oriented language? No, not only Java, there are so many languages available which is supports for OOPS principles. Any language which is supporting for OOPS principles is called as object-oriented programming language. Java is supporting for OOPS principles. That's why Java is called as object-oriented programming language. Alright. So now in the OOPS there are principles available. Object-oriented programming language having 4 principles. Do you remember what are those principles? What is the first one? First one is encapsulation. Second one is abstraction. Third one, polymorphism. Inheritance is available, and polymorphism is also available. Encapsulation, abstraction, inheritance and polymorphism. What is inheritance? Right. What is inherit? What is encapsulation? Combining, combining variables and methods. Combining variables and methods is called as encapsulation. Combining variables and methods as single unit. Combining the variables and methods as a single unit is called as encapsulation. The main purpose of encapsulation is data hiding. If you want to hide the data inside your class, then you can go for encapsulation. The process of combining variables and methods as a single unit is called as encapsulation. What is the example for the encapsulation? Java class. Java class is the example for encapsulation. Then what is abstraction? Hiding the unnecessary details, hiding unnecessary details, hiding unnecessary details and providing only useful information. That is called as abstraction. How to achieve the abstraction? Abstract classes and interfaces. There is a concept called abstract classes and interfaces. By using abstract classes and interfaces, we can achieve abstraction. The process of hiding unnecessary details and providing only useful data is called as abstraction. The process of combining variables and methods is called as encapsulation. Combining variables and methods as single unit is called encapsulation. Java class is the example for encapsulation. It is used for data hiding. It is used for data hiding. Then what is abstraction? Hiding unnecessary details and providing only useful information is called as abstraction. Abstract classes and interfaces are the examples for abstraction. What is inheritance? One class, the process of extending. What is that? The process of extending properties from one class to another class is called as inheritance. The process of extending properties from one class to another class is called as inheritance. What is the main reason going for inheritance? Code reusability. It is used for, what is the meaning of code reusability? The code which is already available we can reuse. If programmer 1 developed some classes, developed some methods, I can access them directly by using inheritance. Accessing the properties of one class in the another class is called as inheritance. The process of extending properties from one class to another class is called as inheritance. The main reason of going for inheritance is code reusability. Then what is polymorphism? What is the polymorphism? Exhibiting multiple behaviors is called as polymorphism. Based on the situation, exhibiting multiple behaviors based on the situation is called as polymorphism. Objects will exhibit multiple behaviors. In the Java, everything will be represented as a object. Objects will exhibit multiple behaviors. Objects will have multiple forms. And objects will exhibit multiple behaviors. Can you call them, guys? Guys, online people, 1 minute. behaviors based on the situation is called as polymorphism. Objects will exhibit multiple behaviors. All right. So OOPS principles we are trying to understand. Initially, procedure-oriented programming languages available to overcome the problems of pop languages, OOP languages came into picture. When we can call one language as a OOP language, when we can call one language as a OOP language, yes, if the language is supporting for OOPS principles, then we can call that language.
షోలాపూర్ ఉల్లిపాయలు నెంబర్ 1 ఉల్లిపాయలు 3 కేజీలు ఉల్లిపాయలు 100 రూపాయలు మాత్రమే మా బండి వద్ద అమ్ముతున్నారు మంచి ఆరుదల కాయలు 3 కేజీలు ఉల్లిపాయలు 100 రూపాయలు మాత్రమే క్వాలిటీ చూసి కొనండి నిల్వ ఆగే ఉల్లిపాయలు షోలాపూర్ ఉల్లిపాయలు నెంబర్ 1 ఉల్లిపాయలు 3 కేజీలు ఉల్లిపాయలు 100 రూపాయలు మాత్రమే మా బండి వద్ద అమ్ముతున్నారు మంచి ఆరుదల కాయలు 3 కేజీలు ఉల్లిపాయలు 100 రూపాయలు మాత్రమే క్వాలిటీ చూసి కొనండి నిల్వ ఆగే ఉల్లిపాయలు షోలాపూర్ ఉల్లిపాయలు నెంబర్ 1 ఉల్లిపాయలు 3 కేజీలు ఉల్లిపాయలు 100 రూపాయలు మాత్రమే మా బండి వద్ద అమ్ముతున్నారు
Object oriented programming language. OOPS principles: encapsulation, abstraction, inheritance, polymorphism. The process of combining variables and methods as single unit is called as encapsulation. The main advantage of going for encapsulation is data hiding. Java class is the example for encapsulation. What is abstraction? Hiding unnecessary details and providing only useful data is called as abstraction. Abstract classes and interfaces are available to achieve abstraction. Next one, inheritance. What is the meaning of inheritance? Extending the properties from one class to another class is called inheritance. We can say it is a parent and child relationship. Parent properties can be inherited by child class. Parent class properties can be inherited by child class. The main use of going for inheritance is code reusability. The code which is developed by one developer can be reused by another developer. Then what is polymorphism? Exhibiting multiple behaviors based on the situation is called as polymorphism. Objects will exhibit multiple behaviors. Alright. Now let's go for encapsulation. It is used for data hiding. It is used for data hiding. We will combine classes, we will combine variables and methods as one single unit using class. Class is one of the example for encapsulation. Java class is one of the best example for encapsulation. Java class is one of the best example for encapsulation. Alright. Guys, now whenever we are working with Java classes, we are going to write class as a public. What is the meaning of a public class? Global access. Public class some student. Public class some student. Inside the student class, I will write the variables integer id string name. Integer id string name. What is the scope for the variables? Global. No, global or default. Did I specify any modifier? No. If I don't specify any modifier, what is the default scope? If I don't specify any modifier, what is the default scope? Default. Okay. If I specify my variables as a public, then anybody can access my variables. My variables contains the data. What is the main purpose of the variables? Variables are used to store the data. Now I'm taking a class public class student. Public class student. So these are used to modify value. These are the variables which are used to store the data. But it is not at all recommended to declare variables as public. Security reasons. Why? Because my variables will represent the data. My variables will represent the data. For example, if I take the class as a bank account, I'm taking the class as a bank account. ID, name and public double balance. What I am doing? Double balance. If I declare my variable as a public, what is the problem here? Everybody can access my variables from outside. They can create the object. They can modify values of my variable. Are you guys getting my point? Here I am storing ID is equal to our account number. Instead of ID, I am giving account number long. I am taking long account number. So this is my bank account number. Assume that. This is my bank account number. And I am taking name, folder name. Name is group of characters. So I am taking as a string. Balance is a decimal value. I am taking as a double. I am storing this balance here. Assume that my account is having this much balance. Got my point? Here I am taking a class, creating a class called bank account. Inside that class I am writing the variables, and inside this I am writing a method public double get balance. What is the method I am writing? Double get balance. Can I do this dot return? Can I return like this? Return this dot balance. Is it valid? What is the meaning of return? What is the meaning of return? To return some value from the method. What is the return type of the method? Double. Now what I am returning? Balance. What is the data type of the balance? Double. So is it valid? Is it valid or not? Yes, it is valid. It is valid. If I write the program like this, what is the problem? What is the problem if I write a code like this? Sorry? What is the variables modifier available? Public. So if it is a public, can anybody create the object? Can anybody access my variables? Can anybody modify the value? They can modify my account number. They can modify my name. They can modify my balance also. Is it recommended to declare variables as public? If I declare variables as a public, everybody can access my variable. If they access, I don't have a problem. When the problem will come? If they modify the value. If they access my variable, there is no problem. But if they modify the value, I will lose my data. I'm going to lose my data. For that reason, we are not going to declare variables as public because of security reasons. We are going to lose our data. If you declare the variable as a public, we are going to lose our data. Anybody can access our variable. Anybody can modify the value of the variable. That's why in the real time, in every class, variables will be declared as a private. Variables will be declared as a private. Why I am declaring variable as a private? That variable value, that variable can be accessed only within the class. Outside people cannot access the variable, cannot modify the value also. So now tell me, variable should be declared as a public or variable should not be declared as a public? should not be declared as a public. What is the reason for that? Come on. What is the reason for that? Security. People can modify the value directly by accessing that outside. Do you want to allow other programmers to modify the value of your variables? No. How to secure that? Hiding. Data hiding. I have to hide my data. I want to hide my data. Then I'm going to take my variable as a private. What will happen if I declare my variable as a private? What will happen if I declare my variable as a private? Only within the class I can access the variable. Outside the class I cannot nobody can access my variable from outside of the class. My variables are private. From now onwards, remember that variables should not be declared as a public. If you want to declare variable as a public, some variables will be available whose data is constant, static variables. What is the static variable? Constant. That is common for all the objects. Any variable which is holding some common data, any variable which is not related to object. Static is not related to object. Any variable which is holding static data which is common for all the objects in the project. That variable we can declare as a static. That static variable we can declare as a public, because object to object data is not going to change. But what about the instance variable? Instance variable nothing but every object will maintain its own copy of the variable. Now, when you are dealing with instance variables, we need to go for private. What is the advantage if I go for private? What is the advantage if I go for private? Security. Nobody can access my variable. Nobody can modify the value of my variable. Within the class, I can access. Within the class, I can modify. But outside the class, nobody can do that. That is the reason in the projects, we are going to create the variables with a private modifier. Okay. Advantage we understood. Can you tell me what is the advantage? Nobody can access the value of the variable outside. Nobody can modify the value of the variable outside. That is advantage. But there is a disadvantage also. Disadvantage is there is no reusability. Are you guys getting my point? So whatever the variables you have declared, I cannot reuse them. I also want the same variables. Can I reuse your variables? You are one programmer, I am another programmer. You created a class, you declared some variables. Can I reuse your variables? No. Why? These variables are private variables. We cannot access them outside. So when you declare variable as a private, advantage is available as well as disadvantage is also available. What is the advantage? What is the disadvantage? Nobody is allowed to modify the value of our variable. You can't change my variable value. That is a advantage. What is the disadvantage? No reusability. There is no reusability. Now, Java is strict to OOPS principles. Java is a secured programming language. Java is a OOP language. Java should support for security and Java should support for reusability also. Are you guys getting my point? Now, for reusability, can I change this as to public? If I make it as a public, I can achieve reusability. What I am losing? I am losing security. If you want to achieve something, you have to lose something. insecurity. If you want to achieve something, you have to lose something.